All right.
Go ahead and go.
Yes, please.
Okay. Hi, my name is Renee.MPG, and today I'm planning on addressing the death penalty. But not in the typical sense that we normally think of, is it being right or is it being wrong, is it morally just or not. My topic is that the mismanagement of the death penalty has inhibited its effectiveness and has become a burden on our economy. I want to start off first by stating that in the state of California alone, there are approximately 620 inmates that are on death row right now that have been convicted sometime in the past and have not had their executions gone through with yet. And I'm also going to talk right now about what the death penalty is. Most states, not all states have the death penalty, but the states that do have it is normally a punishment for murder. But in states such as Texas, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Montana, Louisiana, Florida, and Georgia, certain sex crimes against minors are also punishable by the death penalty. Okay, so my three main points to cover today is the direct correlation between the number of prisoners put to death and the homicide rate in the states that have the death penalty. Number two, that the death penalty was originally meant to be used as an example to people, and by not going through with it, we are tarnishing that example. And number three, that the costs have become extravagant. So on my first point, I have some statistics to read off, so bear with me. They're a little bit hard to understand. In 1999, there were 96 executions. And in that year, the homicide rate in states that had the death penalty was 5.86 per 100,000 people. So not a bad rate, nor comparable to the national average. As in 1994, there were 31 executions, but the homicide rate was up at 9.23 per 100,000 people. That's considerably higher than the national average. And then yet again in 2002, when the execution rate was at 71 people were executed, the homicide rate was at 5.82% per 100,000. This information was all gathered from the Death Penalty Information Center, who got their information from the FBI's Crimes in the United States study. My second point is that the death penalty was meant to be used as an example. It wasn't meant to totally just tarnish crime and end it immediately. It was meant so that people would think twice before they did it. My example that I'm choosing to use today is Tookie Williams. We all remember somewhere between 3 and 5 years ago, he was a gang person that was on his death row and had tried to get his execution stayed. Tookie Williams was a good example because he was one of the first leaders of gangs that was actually put to death for his crimes. And since then, there have been the police chiefs have stated that in LA, that police chief, I totally just blanked that name, I'm sorry, but he stated that that the crime rate has been falling because gangs suddenly realize that they can get put to death for what they have done. And then my second point, second sub-point in that, is that the sitting on death row changes criminals. According to different jailers, one in particular was interviewed by William Tucker, who is the American Spectator's New York's correspondent, and they stated that the prisoners on death row change as time goes on. They start to realize what they've done, and they even begin to feel remorse. Which, as this gets out, people just think that they can get away with things and that they'll never think about it again. My third point is that the costs have become extravagant. On average, the typical death row inmate costs $90,000 a year. Mind you that the average American household makes $45,000 a year. This is due to the fact that they are forced to remain in solitary confinement and that they have to have specialized prisons because they're considered maximum security risks. They also have to have everything else that a regular prisoner has, 3 meals a day, medical expenses, and everything, and all the amenities that we have to provide. And in conclusion, I feel that the death penalty has been misused and mismanaged to the point that it's not as effective as it once was. When execution rates are higher, it is statistically shown that homicide rates are lower. So I believe that is, and also that the death penalty was made to be used as an example, which is coincides with the fact that the rates are comparable to each other, and that in this economy right now, we can't afford to continue to house these prisoners on death row that cost us $90,000. Thank you.
No, we don't have time for questions.
Damn. I was
5:04.
5:04?
That's what I have. But
I got 5:10, but that's okay.
All right, Renee, you identify the topic. I think there's an okay setup of what you're talking about, but your claims are not as clear as they need to be, and they get a little confusing during the presentation. This is really pretty straightforward. Your real argument is the way the death penalty is currently used makes it ineffective. Yeah. You know, and keep the claim relatively simple about that. When you signpost the claims in the preview of the speech, the first two aren't even stated as inferences. They're just descriptive pieces of information. And when you get to the first point, that's all I get is data on that point. An argument involves making inference. What inference should I gather from the data that you're presenting on the first point? And to me, the inference is fairly clear, but remember, you're talking and you're the one who's supposed to be making the argument, and the inference is that when the death penalty is used more frequently, it has greater impact. That's really what the claim needs to be. And that's the biggest problem with the speech, is that you've got information in the presentation, but you're not always telling us what conclusion we should be drawing from that information. At the end of the speech, I think you give us a little clearer statement of what the point of the speech was, and it's easy to see in retrospect where you're going with that, but it should be easy to follow throughout the presentation, and I thought that was a little bit problematic. I got one quote, for instance, where you're talking about where the death penalty inmates, they develop remorse, that when they're on there, they're changed people. You've got an interesting quote. And I have no idea how I'm supposed to apply that to anything that you've talked about. It's interesting information, but does it show that the death penalty deters? Does it show that it's effective? Does it show that it reduces costs? I don't know how I'm supposed to use that information, and I'm not saying it's bad information, I just don't know what it's there for. And there are a couple of other pieces of information like that also. So you always want to think, okay, what claim is this data supporting? I need to put that together with other data that supports the same claim, and then organize it that way. And I just don't think that that comes across as clearly as it needs to. All right, thank you for starting.